you have the right to invade their thought process or their behavioral health. The other thing that we can do is support through the legislative process and support through our social contract with each other. Those that have been affected by the war, whether it's soldiers or civilians. You know, there's a lot of people who've lost family members to the war, and they've got PTSD and anxiety and other stresses just from that situation in and of itself. I think PTSD and the associated factors are a lot more widespread than, you know, what we're looking at. And so I think until we start addressing the issue in a multifaceted approach and start addressing it from several angles, through the legislative process, through our social process, and through our religious institutions, we're not going to be able to really provide the type of help that these soldiers need.
Right. And I think a lot of times, you know, they send soldiers and other service members to the VA, and their best solution is, hey, you know what, you're suffering from PTSD, here, take some medicine, you know, or get over it. You know, basically they dope these veterans up, you know, because you're dealing with a lot of people within the administration who haven't actually been out there and they haven't shared the same experiences as Mark and other service members. But how is what you're going through, how has that affected your family members and your loved ones?
Well, I'd like to say something about the medication issue real quick. One of the issues that I've seen since, now the VA was doing that. They were doping people up. They were, here's some medication, and the military was doing it too. Here's some medication, go on your way. One of the problems now is, just like any other messed up institution, they kind of operate whichever way the wind blows. And so now they're so scared to prescribe medication because they've gotten hit so many times through the media that now it's hard for veterans to get medication that they need in a lot of situations. Now in some situations they're still overprescribing medication. But what we need to do is we need to put emphasis on the providers making the decision of what's best for the veteran. And we need to kind of keep politics out of the veteran care itself. Providing the care for the veteran, politics definitely needs to get in, but with politics in the actual care of the veteran, it's causing a harm that's not being discussed yet. Right. And with me, it's really frustrating me. I've seen it with myself and with other veterans that I deal with on a daily basis. With the family issue that you'd asked about, I personally have gone through a lot of issues, and my family and I ended up disintegrating after I got out of the military. And after I got out of the military, I lost all my support base in the military. My PTSD was through the roof. My anxiety was through the roof. And I started down a path of self-destruction. And it wasn't until I found my way out of that myself that I started to actually get better. Who's Saving Who was one of the ways that I helped myself get out of that, because by helping other veterans, I was helping myself. You know, when I help other people, it builds me back up and helps me feel better. But I won't blame it all on PTSD, but PTSD had a very, very good impact on my family disintegrating.
So tell us, like, what are some of the things that your organization are involved in?
Well, as far as the organization, we try to get with shelters and trainers throughout the United States. And with transitioning from Missouri to here, I personally am gonna start working in the New Jersey, New York area. There's a few people that I've got now that I'm getting ready to work with in the area. But what I'd really like to do is I'd really like to develop a network throughout the United States of shelters and trainers, and also be able to help fund those situations wherever I can, where the shelter may need a rehoming fee.
Right.
Or the trainer may not be able to do it for the veteran for free, but maybe at a reduced cost, to help train the service dog for a veteran. So what I want to do is not only where I'm located do I want to be able to facilitate training service dogs for veterans, but I also want to be able to facilitate it nationwide, wherever there's a need. I just spoke to a lady who's got a young man in Montana struggling, and if he could benefit from my service, I'd like to be able to provide it in that area also. Right. And in order to do that, just like everything else, you need funds.
Right.
And I don't rely on the government for funding. I'm a good Republican, and I stay away from that. So I haven't sought out any type of grants or anything like that, and I rely strictly on the individuals around us. So sometimes that's hard, but eventually, when the time's right, and you know, it's God's will, who's saving who will take off, and go where it needs to go. I will say, I started with a fundraising goal of $6,000. I was able to raise $3,000. Now the $6,000 was supposed to cover four placements.
Okay.
I ended up doing the 4 placements with the $3,000 instead of the $6,000. It's the book thing going off upstairs, I think. So I was able, normally a lot of organizations will charge $6,000 just for one dog. And I was able to facilitate the placement of 4 dogs with half the money that I originally intended.
Wow.
Now that came at somewhat of a personal cost, but I was able to do it.
Right. So you invested your own personal money into this?
Oh yeah.
And I'm assuming that you have like fellow battle buddies, you know, Marines, airmen, and whatnot, who actually donated.
Yeah, most of the donations to Who's Saving Who have come from other soldiers.
Okay.
And, you know, as soldiers, we take care of our own, but I'd like to see the civilian population step in and really start to help in the process.
Why do you think there's such a lack of respect and gratitude towards the men and women in uniform? Like, I mean, why is that?
Honestly, I don't think there is. In the Midwest, in the South, men and women in uniform have a lot of respect. Even up here in New York and New Jersey, even though it's not my cup of tea, I've been showing a lot of respect. You know, I don't have people spitting in my face. I don't have people. When we went to the flag burning ceremony, when we went to the flag burning event where they were trying to burn the flag, you know, even those people weren't extremely disrespectful like what we witnessed in the Vietnam era. So I think that's getting better. I think it needs to continue to get better. And I think we need to we need to give more than lip service to our gratitude. Right. We need to start taking action to be able to support and protect those who have protected us.
But do you think that there's like a sense of apathy, like, okay, if we don't respect the military? Because, I mean, I've seen people show both gratitude and just completely, like, just disenchanted with us and our service, you know, especially with, you know, the war in Iraq
Right.
and whatnot. I mean, have you ever experienced that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, when you are associated with anything,
Right.
you're gonna receive the attention of that organization. So with Who's Saving Who, I'm up here representing it. When I'm in uniform, I'm representing the military. If people are dissatisfied with the military system, or with what we're doing overseas, as a representative of the military, I heard about it, you know, and a lot of times it wasn't very friendly. And there's people like that all over the United States. I don't think there's much we can do to change that. I don't think there's much that we can do to influence the opinion of someone whose mind's made up. I think that through public discourse and dialogue, education, and through the social process and political process, I think we can change a lot of that.
Right.
But I think that until we start taking those steps, not much is going to change, not much is going to happen.
Have your organization have had people who have been helped come back to you and, you know, tell you thank you so much for bringing this dog into my life. I really appreciate everything.
Absolutely. One of the individuals I help is the biggest donor to Who's Saving Who.
Really?
That individual, you know, he was on the brink of suicide when we met, and within 2 months of him receiving his service dog, he went from the brink of suicide to almost a completely fully functional individual. He was in a lot of legal trouble, and he ended up getting himself out of his legal troubles, ended up getting himself on the right track, and he's living a much better life now because of the service dog and the way it impacted and changed the course of his life. So absolutely, there's a huge amount of respect from the individuals that I've helped. There's one individual I helped dropped off the map, and PTSD, you know, it has its effects, and so you can't help everybody maybe the way you want, but I've helped as much as I could.
Right.
And I've seen some really great results from it.
No, that's good. That's
Yeah.
definitely good. All right, so let's take some questions. Anybody have any questions for Mark? Don't be shy. I'm the one up here, so don't be shy.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I'm late, so please, I didn't get all of the, I apologize. This is like a great event, and Brandon, new president, is doing a great job. This is fabulous. I love the military, I'm pro-military. So the question I'm gonna ask is not a knock on anything.
Hit me with it.
I'm just trying to find out more information.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm like, is it the global terror, because you were talking about
Global war on
Afghanistan.
terrorism?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
you were talking about the Afghan Taliban. I'm very interested in it.
Yes, sir.
Because like, from my research, my own research, understanding, the global terror network is basically Iran.
Iran's a huge supporter of terrorism, and it's the largest state sponsor
In the
of
world.
terrorism throughout the world. Yes, sir.
And it's my understanding that there's a connection between, like, for example, Al-Qaeda and Iran. There's a connection there, though there's a Sunni Shiite
Right.
divide.
They're separate, but
Right.
they support each other and
And
work together.
there's a Hezbollah, obviously, connection with
Hezbollah, yes,
Hezbollah with Iran.
Yes, sir.
And there's also a Hamas with Iran.
Yep.
So now my question is, because I'm trying to find better data, Afghan Taliban, I'm assuming you served, because I have tremendous respect for the people that serve for this nation.
Right.
I love my country. I'm just trying to find out more information on the Afghan Taliban and their connection with Iran. Is there an actual, like, would you say, have you, like, because I know, like, for example.
Personally, connection between Taliban and Iran, I have not physically participated in any operation that I witnessed a connection like that. But one of my jobs has been to work in an intelligence role for the military.
Wow.
And in the intelligence role, you're able to find information, open source information, which will show you links and causations between different terrorist events. One of the books that you can get is called the 9/11 Timeline, and it shows you every event going back to the 1960s,
Wow.
pre-formulation of the Taliban, up till now, where they got their support from, how they came to power, how Al-Qaeda and Taliban worked together, and the link between the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and Iran. You know, when you're talking about a global terrorist network, just like ISIS, you know, ISIS, even though,
I don't mean to cut you off, because I don't believe, based on the data that I've seen, that obviously ISIS exists. Are they as big as Iran? I don't think so.
well,
The reason why I'm saying that is, not to dispute what you're saying, obviously you know more than me, you're in there. I'm on the outside looking in. I'm looking at all this data, like for example, the 9/11 hit. They came out, I think in 2011 and 2000, one of those years, there was the United States District Court ruled that Iran, because the families of the victims
right, help sponsor it.
Right. That Iran was there before, during, and after. They were directly, materially sponsoring these Taliban hits on the World Trade Center.
And they've been sponsoring terrorist attacks since 1970s. I mean, they held
That's right.
hostages.
And then they just found the Crowbar, the Crowbar Towers in Saudi Arabia, the big bombing over there.
Yeah.
They just captured one of the big leaders just recently.
Right.
Because the reason why I'm asking this too, because I'm trying to figure out Benghazi. Because I believe, you know, based on, not such as my belief, that there are investigative reporters that are there like yourself, and they're claiming that the big cover-up on Benghazi is that it's Iran was the Quad Force, the General Soleimani, was behind that al-Sharia group.
The Quds Force.
Yeah, the Quds Force.
You know, that's a subject that I'm not.
Oh.
I don't have any part of.
Quick
you
question.
know, once we start talking about Benghazi.
I'm curious, going back to the dogs, would a non-trained for service dog be a help to a vet? It's say if a vet couldn't afford, or you know,
Yeah,
do you recommend
as a pet, you're talking about.
Yeah. As a, you know.
So there's two types of service that could be provided. One is like a pet assisted therapy, and the other is a service dog. Now, a service dog performs service tasks to actually aid the individual. Pet can actually aid the individual psychologically and emotionally, but won't perform specific tasks. So yes, a pet can help a veteran significantly. In certain cases, I can facilitate that process as well. It's just a matter of what's best for the veteran and what the veteran's needs are.
On that, I'm curious. Do you know if it would be difficult to train an untrained dog to become a service dog, and if it cuts off at a certain age, or you know, does it have to start from
No, there's no cutoff. Actually, I rescue dogs of all ages, of all breeds. The thing that I look at is what are the veterans' needs. So the way dogs are being killed right now and euthanized throughout the country, you could basically stack up the body bags like the Holocaust every day. It's horrible. Now, our veteran suicide rate's 22 a day and rising. So, you know, there's a lot of deaths that are not necessary. When you look at training a dog, there are so many dogs out there that have the potential to help a veteran that it's easy to find a dog. The hardest thing is finding the resources and finding the veteran that needs the help.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, sir. In the back first.
Okay, thanks, Josh. I want to thank you and the other veterans for your service. Question is about PTSD.